So this is Majjhima Nikaya 38, the Greater Discourse on the Destruction of Craving. I think we'll only go through a bit of it.
Yes, fine. Yeah, you choose the relevant bits, read them out, whatever, and then we'll see what comes out of it.
So this is the setting, the beginning of the sutta. So on one occasion, a pernicious view or unbeneficial view, because opposite is from Kalyana view.
Right, it's not like pernicious as in it's evil. It's more like harmful to himself.
It's a harmful view.
Harmful view to the person who holds it.
Yes. So now on that occasion, a harmful view had arisen in a bhikkhu named Sati, son of a fisherman. Thus, as I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, it is this same consciousness that runs and wanders through the round of rebirths, not another. Or it is the same consciousness that runs and wanders through samsara, not another consciousness. And several bhikkhus, other bhikkhus...
Well, even before we go further, again, like people might just too easily dismiss that. Of course, that's the wrong view, but you want to ask yourself, do you really know why it is wrong, here and now? Not just because the Buddha said so, but do you see for yourself why he said it is wrong view? Well, that will already require somebody to start clarifying the designation consciousness or vijnana or whatever you want to call it. And people might realize that very often they end up using these words without any clarity in regard to what they actually mean, or what are you designating when you say consciousness? To yourself, not to others. Just sit with yourself and say consciousness, consciousness. What is consciousness? And somebody's reading, what are you referring to? Where is that question aimed? What do you want to know? So that's how you begin this process of clarification, so to speak. But the point is, once you start discerning, and clearly that Sati, the Bhikkhu Sati, who was, people might assume reading the sutta he's like an idiot. And mind you, the Buddha called him an idiot, but for the different reasons. People might assume, he's just some simpleton, but no, he clearly understood what consciousness is. And then he thought it's that thing that he understood that sort of stays for future lives and so on. And the problem with that, the reason why that view is wrong, is because any notion of this life and the future life, and if there is a connection between the two, as in this is what gets reborn, or simply asking a question, what gets reborn, that already assumes that something gets reborn, any of those attitudes require an external point of view to your experience right here, right now. And that in itself is Attavada.
So he's thinking...
So because he has a wrong view now in regard to his own experience, from that he then assumed further that it is this consciousness that moves around and goes to the next life and next life. So what he said just revealed his wrong view right here, right now. Because of that assumption of Attavada, assumption of the external self, that not just he's not undoing, he's clearly adding more to it with all these other views that he's developing, like, this is the rebirth and this is that, and the Buddha said this. Because of all of that, he's actually harming himself. But you cannot, your only reference point is the experience you have, this life, that's it. So when you think about before or after this life, it's within this experience as a whole. So you then assuming there is this life and then the next life as the valid next life, perception of it, it's all within this experience, right here, right now. So that whole thing certainly cannot be proven in a sense. You cannot see it the way you think you're seeing it, which is that external manner from which you can step aside and then see yourself here and then say, yes, when this bit goes, this is the other part that moves to the next life and to the next life. Nobody can see things like that, not even the Buddha himself. So assuming such a view is entirely mistaken from the point of view of the nature of things.
And what if someone says, or if he says that it's the same consciousness that is in every experience that I experience. So yesterday it's the same consciousness
again,
as it is today.
Again, that statement would be rooted in the assumption of the external point of view in regard to the consciousness from which you're designating.
So it's the same consciousness that
or
hears you,
when there's like
that
some of the interpretation when they say like the moments of consciousness that last a certain number of milliseconds or whatever.
No.
Like, that's inconceivable. Not just that you can't measure other people's consciousness, but you can't actually even see your own. So when people try to say, no, in your samadhi, time stands still and then you can see, you can't. As the Buddha described what is present in samadhi, it's basically nama rupa vijnana, vijnana nama rupa. It's the five aggregates that's present in samadhi. So whether it's samadhi or not samadhi, your experience is there as a whole, the five aggregates. So you thinking that samadhi gives you some super special power of stopping the time and stepping outside of the five aggregates and then witnessing it with your eyes, that's ridiculous. That's just fantasy. Because the Buddha, not just that he said that in samadhi, it's just absence of lust, aversion, delusion. He said there is still contact, there is still attention, there is still feeling, there is still mindfulness. In that one by one Majjhima Nikaya about Sariputta's attainments, 111. But then he also said even when people remember previous lives or future lives, they remember one of the aggregates, right here, right now. One of the aggregates, or all of them, within that. You can't step outside. In the same sense, your yesterdays and your tomorrow are within your today. Your previous life, your future life are also within your today. So you projecting this linear view of this cosmology basically of your rebirth and what moves, it's completely gratuitous and utterly divorced from any kind of like reflexive recognition and discernment. It's just, well, you can recognize and discern that it's completely wrong. So if somebody says, oh, my consciousness now and later, again, they assume external point of view just on a smaller scale. It's not about next life, it's about next moment. But still, they're trying to disassociate themselves from their experience as a whole, failing to see that they're entirely enclosed within it. As if you're trapped in a coffin, buried in the ground. You can't conceive the way out.
So even, I was just saying earlier, it's the same consciousness that hears you, it sees you.
Sure.
Right now.
Yeah. That can only be assumed.
And it's the same
Or you can say it's a different consciousness. Or you can say it's both same and different. You can mystify it. And then you can mystify your mystification and say, well, it's neither the same nor different consciousness. Either way, each of those four statements designates your assumption of external point of view to the consciousness. That's why the Buddha said, no, I didn't say it is the same. I didn't say it isn't the same. I didn't say it's neither the same nor not the same. Sorry, I didn't say it's both same and not the same, nor neither the same nor not the same. I didn't say any of it because saying any of it still feeds your view.
Designates your assumption.
Yeah.
Designates your assumption. Because consciousness
literally means presence of things. So you can't even think about the pure presence and whatnot. That's utterly meaningless and as mystical as it sounds. So what is presence? How you discern presence? On account of things that are present, on account of phenomena that have arisen. So that's the conscious aspect of the arisen experience. So you mystifying that presence as some sort of energy, well, it's clearly a thought in your mind, which means that thought is present, which means that thought cannot be that presence which consciousness is. That's just how it works. The fact that you imagined it means you're conscious of it. And you can't be conscious of your consciousness.
And what's it saying? That's saying that wisdom is to be developed.
Consciousness to be understood. Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
Not seen directly.
Yeah. Exactly, you can't. Because that would require you to step outside. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. You can discern it. You can understand it. And by doing so, you develop wisdom. By understanding the consciousness, you understand the nature of presence, the nature of arising, the nature of manifestation.
And where you are.
Well, exactly. Well,
yes. To that.
Yeah, there won't be much left of you if you understand things correctly in that sense. As in, you maintain your sense of self through that external assumption to your own experience. That's just how it works, Ratavada. And it's as subtle as that. It's not like a Putujana goes, why boy? It's not like Putujana goes around saying, oh, I think I am this or I am that. No, it's just a subtle assumption that you can see yourself in the external manner, for example, or that you can see what's in for you, or you can see the next day in a manner that's independent of you. Assumption of a public world, assumption of a public space and time that we are in, not that it's in our experience, and so on. All those things go back to that subtle factor of Attavada, assumption of the external point of view, one way or the other.
Subtle assumption of the external view. Yeah. So, I'll continue. So, the subtle assumption of an external view.
In regard to your own experience.
In regard to your own experience. That
in regard to your own self. Right.
That is why he's wrong.
That's why it's a wrong view, exactly.
So, several bhikkhus, having heard about this Bhikkhu Sati, went to him and asked him, "Friend Sati, is it true that such a harmful view has arisen in you?" So he says, exactly so, friends. As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, it is the same consciousness that runs and wanders through the round of rebirths, not another. Then those bhikkhus, desiring to detach him from that harmful view, pressed and questioned, cross-questioned him, said thus, "Friend Sati, do not say so. Do not misrepresent the Blessed One. It is not good to misrepresent the Blessed One. The Blessed One would not speak thus, for in many ways the Blessed One has stated consciousness to be dependently arisen."
As I said, there is no presence without something being present.
Since without a condition, there is no origination of consciousness.
Well, there you go. But that translation, though, origination could imply the time. As in, the first thing comes, then the consciousness arises a second. But that's not the case. As the Buddha said, consciousness and things that you are conscious of, as in Namarupa, the all, are like two sticks simultaneously propping each other up. You remove one, the other one cannot remain standing. And that's not a momentary thing that you can observe, because if you think you're observing consciousness and Namarupa's dependence, means you're assuming you're outside of it. So in this particular case, even in the broadest terms, you can't have presence unless there's something present. So even when you think the word, letters, presence in your mind, that is present for you. Thoughts are present. Imagination, abstraction, it is present, means you're conscious of it. That's how you can know things at any given time. Because they're present. But people sort of would detach presence from cause things, and then when they think about the presence, the pure presence, the presence of the presence, the presence of your awareness, all of these things, they fail to see that also is an arisen thing, that it's present for them, and thus cannot stand for that presence of that very thing. And he clearly assumes that presence is independent and it moves around for the next life and next life. Yeah. So the Buddha said, they said to him, didn't the Buddha say that the consciousness cannot stand on its own?
Yeah.
So it's not a question, it's the same consciousness or different. The point is, consciousness of any kind is inconceivable without something to be conscious of simultaneously. Yeah. And you can't step outside of it to see it because you are it. That's what Navira said in one of his letters, maybe. He said, if you attend to Namarupa, well, your experience is undermined by the independence of Vijnana. If you try to attend to the presence, the nature of Vijnana, your experience is undermined by the presence of independence of Namarupa. As in, you can't take two things to the same extent at the same time, because that would require you to step outside of them, but you can't because you are them. That's what I'm talking about, the peripheral, discerning the background of whatever you're attending, whatever it's present. Anyhow, go.
Yeah, no pure consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. That's a complete fallacy, the idea of pure consciousness.
Pure consciousness.
Like, that's a concept.
Yeah.
That's an idea that is present as such, and people are obviously not conscious of it, because they think that's what consciousness is. Because when you say presence of presence, one of those presences is not presence. it's the object of the other presence. By you trying to level them on the same ground means not understanding either.
Or is an assumption.
Of course.
Pure consciousness is
Nature's assumption.
So,
and
together
attitude,
with it's wrong.
And you maintain assumption not because you're actively choosing to hold on to it. You're maintaining it by not undoing it, by not fully understanding it. That's all it takes to maintain ignorance, not make the effort to understand the ignorance. Because people think attachments and assumptions and so on is something you do, and then all you have to do is stop doing it, and then you're free from it. Oh, I'm attached to my possessions, I will throw away my possessions, thus I'm free from attachment. No. I assume the external point of view, okay, so then I'll just sort of stop assuming it. You can't just stop assuming it. The only way to stop assuming the external view is to understand the mistake of external view, the incompatibility, the discrepancy, the inconceivable aspect of it. Yeah. You understand that the true external point of view, which you seem to imply with your assumption, is inconceivable, then the assumption becomes redundant and it fades.
So is that Panchupadana Kanda?
Uh-huh.
The 5 aggregates affected by assumption.
Yeah.
Is basically five aggregates that you think you are.
Yeah. And that's why I keep saying that is the starting point for everyone. People who read it think, okay, so there is these 5 aggregates that I keep taking. No. Yeah. Putujana, for him, the threshold is Pancha Upadana Kanda. That's the threshold for him. 5 assumed aggregates. So he can't see 5 aggregates by themselves, because if he starts seeing that, he would start seeing the independence of them, he would start to lose his own Attavada, he would stop being a Putujana. But if he thinks he sees them, as in, oh, I'm seeing the 5 aggregates and now I'm practicing not attachment to them, that's the practice that leads me to Sodapati and whatnot, he won't make the effort to really see them, because he thinks he already sees them.
Yeah, but so that's what you're saying, is where you start is ignorance.
Yeah.
Is in that assumption.
Yeah.
So one should be clear on that. That's
absolutely. Yeah. So if you recognize that you're ignorant, means anything you think you know, you must not take for granted. That's why you must investigate, you must not leave anything unturned, you must look for the meaning, you must clarify the meaning and so on. That's all the Buddha was talking about. Because otherwise, you will assume things that you think you know. And because of that, you won't really get to know what they are.
So continue with the sutta. And they were questioning him, the Sati, Bhikkhu Sati, the other bhikkhus. Yet, although pressed and questioned and cross-questioned by those bhikkhus in this way, the Bhikkhu Sati, son of a fisherman, still didn't want to move from his view, adhered to that harmful view and continued to insist upon it.
So again, he clearly did not see their view as a harmful view. Like when the view is designated a harmful view, that's designated by the one who was reciting the sutta for the audience, saying, oh, he holds a harmful view. But from the point of view of Sati, the Bhikkhu Sati, he clearly thought that's what the Buddha was teaching. So he thought the other monks they were trying to dissuade him are wrong.
Yeah, he thought they were holding.
Yeah, he thought, exactly, he thought, no, this is the right view, you have the wrong view.
Yeah. And so the other bhikkhus, they couldn't do anything about it, so they went to the Buddha and told the Buddha about this and asked for his help. And the Buddha asked for them to call him Sati, Bhikkhu Sati, so he could question it. So anyway, Bhikkhu Sati comes to the Buddha, and the Buddha asks him, Sati, is it true that the following harmful view has arisen in you? As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, it is this same consciousness that runs and wanders through the round of rebirths, not another. Sati replies, exactly so, Venerable Sir. That's exactly how I understand it. So the Buddha asks him, what is that consciousness, Sati? And he says, it is that which speaks and feels and experiences here and there the result of good and bad actions.
That's actually quite a contemporary view of consciousness among many people. Yeah, most people think that like it's your consciousness that does all this, that gets the retribution of karma, that gets reborn and so on. Even if they don't necessarily call it the consciousness. They might use a different word or don't use any words at all, but the view is still there.
That which speaks and feels and experiences here and now.
So the fact that you even refer to it as that means you have assumed it as if you can see it as an object. Oh, it's that which does all these things. Failing to see that that thing that you're designating as that which does all these things is a present thing. Which means there is a presence in regard to that thing. Which means that's what consciousness is, that presence, not what you are designating it to be.
And so the Buddha replies, misguided man. But
I think he was a bit harsher than that.
In the Pali it said, he calls Bhikkhu Sati a Moga Purisa, which translates as foolish man, but idiot.
Useless idiot.
Useless, stupid man.
Idiot, yeah.
So, an idiot. So he says, you stupid man, to whom have you ever known me to teach the Dhamma in that way? You stupid man, have I not stated in many ways consciousness to be dependently arisen, since without a condition there is no origination of consciousness? But you, stupid man, have misrepresented us by your wrong grasp and injured yourself and stored up much demerit, for this will lead to your harm and suffering for a long time.
So why is that? Just because. In modern terms you say, just because he misunderstood what consciousness is. Yet the Buddha publicly, in front of the whole assembly, keeps calling that man stupid man, an idiot, a useless man, a fool, because he misunderstood. Not because he done anything wrong by body, speech or mind, so to speak. He hasn't broken the rules or anything like that. He just misunderstood what the Buddha was teaching.
Yeah.
And that's how serious that is. That the Buddha says you not just injured yourself, but lots of future demerit, so to speak. Because he's been probably going around saying that that's what the Buddha is teaching. He was teaching that which he thought the Buddha was teaching, while that's not what the Dhamma is. Yeah. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
Not clearly knowing that you know, but basing your sort of, how to put it, based like founding your understanding, establishing your understanding upon lack of clarity, upon something that's just agreeable or pleasing to you, or it makes sense, without really understanding why it makes sense, to what extent it makes sense, and how it makes sense. And why, without really understanding things that don't make sense, why they don't make sense, why are they wrong, why are the right things right. Basically, without understanding right is right, wrong is wrong, which is the criteria for a Sotapanna. And everybody knows that. See, that's the thing. He might have, you might feel sorry for him. Okay, well, he only misunderstood what consciousness is. Why was the Buddha so harsh, publicly humiliating him? Because everybody would be humiliated. But yeah, that's not, he's responsible for it, because he wouldn't have arrived at it without willfully ignoring the fact that he already knows that he hasn't fully penetrated and understood and freed himself from suffering, or understood wholesome is wholesome, unwholesome is all of those things. He basically, through his carelessness, ignored that aspect that would have made him concerned before he started speaking about what the Buddha is teaching. He just wouldn't be doing it unless he's clear. Or certainly if he's doing it, he would make sure that he's not sure. He will make sure to tell people that he's not sure. But then you wouldn't. You wouldn't be teaching them, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So the fact that he was going around and saying this is what the Lord teaches, coming out of his own lack of effort to understand, yeah, that's why it's so bad. That's why he's so responsible for it. Although, like, yeah, in today's modern terms, you would think, well, what's the big deal? I mean, many people misunderstand many things. Yeah, exactly. That's how big a deal it is.
Yeah. And the Buddha goes on, then the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus, the other bhikkhus that were there, thus, Bhikkhus, what do you think? Has this bhikkhu Sati, son of a fisherman, kindled even a spark of wisdom in this Dhamma and discipline?
While bhikkhu Sati sitting next to him.
Yeah. So
it's like public humiliation in a school class.
Basically, yeah. And so everyone, all the other bhikkhus say, how could he, Venerable Sir? No, Venerable Sir. When this was said, the bhikkhu Sati, son of a fisherman, sat silent, dismayed, embarrassed, with shoulders drooping, depressed, head down, glum, without response. So he wasn't very happy, one could say. Then, knowing this, the Blessed One told him, you stupid man.
Again, reiterated.
You will be recognized by your own harmful view.
That's what people remember him for.
Yeah. Yeah. And now for generations of that.
2.5 millennia later, still his name is still associated with it.
Yeah. So while he's sitting there, he says, I shall question the bhikkhus on this matter. Then the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus, Bhikkhus,
just to point out there, like, you know, some people might think like, well, why would the Buddha do that? You know? Yeah, of course the Buddha is right, but why was he so rude? Because he wasn't. Because the Buddha has, well, not even the Buddha, like even Sotapanna would have that perspective already, let alone an Arahant. You really know important from unimportant. So upsetting somebody here and now, making him feel ashamed of his wrong view, boo-hoo basically, he's going to be upset. But at least it might shake him to his core and he'll make the effort and understand, as it often happened when they felt ashamed. And even there's the chanting that's kind of done in the temples in the morning. Oh, will I be ashamed at the end of my life if I'm questioned by other monks? Like, where is my understanding? What did I develop? It's a valid thing that can spur you to make the effort rightly. And again, the Buddha's perspective was not just, oh, I must not upset anyone in this life. No, he could see that because of that wrong view, if that bhikkhu doesn't abandon it, not just that he'll remain a Puthujjana, that he won't become an Arahant, he's going to end up in some horrible rebirth because he's been going around saying, misrepresenting the Buddha, that then resulted in other people also thinking the Buddha was teaching that, not what the real Dhamma is, and so on. Basically being responsible directly or indirectly for many people's misunderstandings that then resulted in their misdeeds and everything else would be on him and his harmful view. So the Buddha could see that unless he abandons it, he's going to pay the price that really nobody wants to be paying. So what is, from that point of view, upsetting him now for a few days? That's nothing in comparison. That's what the Buddha meant when he said, like, when he gave that simile, like, what if you have a single child and if it swallows something, wouldn't you stick your arm in its throat and pull that thing out, even if you make the child bleed and hurt it? You would, because it would at least save its life. As in a long run, you would save it by harming it initially, by upsetting it initially.
Yeah. But in a way, because it's been recorded, Sati, well, who knows if he changed his view, but this whole incident can help others to see
well,
this.
Clearly, the fact that it's there as a teaching example means Sati, but the fact that he was able to sit through that means he did sort of do some good.
So the Buddha continues to question the other bhikkhus, and they are all in agreement with him about Sati. And so then the Buddha makes a statement about consciousness. Bhikkhus, consciousness is reckoned by the particular condition dependent upon which it arises. When consciousness arises dependent on the I and forms, it is reckoned as I consciousness, and so on.
If the sight is present, you're talking about presence of sights. sound, smell, taste, touches are present. You're talking about sound, smell, taste, touches, their presence.
Yeah.
So the presence of these things is what consciousness is, which means trying to even reasoning consciousness as a separate entity is completely mistaken. That's where the correct reasoning is, the reasoning that doesn't disassociate consciousness from the things that's inseparable from. Because as I said, even when you think the word consciousness in itself, that thing is present in your mind that you are conscious of. So you have to do is stop misconceiving that that word, that term, stands for that which presence of things is. Because you can't have pure presence, you can't go below it and see it in front of you. It's always behind, so to speak. So in that sense, yeah, presence of this is different than presence of this. But yeah, overall you can say presence is there because there is something present. There is this present. With this, this is. That's the most basic definition of Paticcasamuppada.
It gives a simile. Just as a fire is reckoned by the particular condition dependent on which it burns. When fire burns dependent on logs, it is reckoned as a log fire. If it burns dependent on sticks, it's reckoned as a stick fire.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying here.
So it's not
If
the same.
the sights are present, then it's presence of sights.
Yeah, but it's
Sounds
the same
are
fire.
present. Well, yeah, but you can, as the nature of the aggregate is, if you want to discern it, you see it doesn't matter what presence, it doesn't matter that what presence as presence of what is present, it doesn't matter. What matters is that there is a presence there in itself, of any kind. So whether it's sight, sound, smell, taste, touches, thoughts, doesn't matter, presence is there. Doesn't matter what feeling is there. Doesn't matter what intentions are there, and so on. That's if you try to understand it from the point of view of the aggregates. When you stop being concerned even with that relatively non-particular designation of presence of sights, which is quite a general designation already. It's not a presence of this particular sight on account of that particular sight. If it's a sight, there is a presence of sights. Means there is the I consciousness, as the suttas would call it. But even that, you can go even more broadly, more peripherally, and that's how you start discerning the aggregates when you say, well, it doesn't matter even what sense. It doesn't matter what sense the consciousness sort of is presence of. Consciousness is there, presence is there. And that's why consciousness is the last aggregate you can discern in such manner after you cover everything else. Because everything else appears to some extent. Means everything else you are conscious of. Everything else is present. And when you define, fully clarified, everything that is present, then you can understand the nature of presence without making it a foreground of a new present object, which is what people do. Hence, Yoniso Manasikara and peripheral awareness and everything else we've been talking about. Anyway, go ahead.
And he continues to question the bhikkhus on. Okay, well, it says, bhikkhus, do you see this has come to be?
Ah, I know that bit. It's actually, the Pali says, monks, do you see this is, or this has arisen. He doesn't say this has come to be, which implies again origination, a process that you observe of something coming into being. No, monks, do you see this is present, or this is? That's actually what the Pali says. I remember I translated that bit a long time ago in one of the essays. I can't remember which one. Maybe I never even published it. Yeah, monks, do you see this is? Or this is present. It's a very present tense basically. It's not like this has come to be. Oh yes, I saw this. Having been before has come to be now.
Do you see
this is?
this?
Do you see this? Monks, do you see this is present? You can say like that.
Yeah, because there's Bhuta, is the Bhuta Midanti. So yeah, this. Do you see this? Do you see this?
Monks, do you see this?
Yeah, this. And I say yes.
Yeah, we see that this is present.
It says, bhikkhus, do you see its origination occurs with that as nutriment?
I think I had to patch it on it.
Do you see that it originated with that as fuel?
So if it's the sites you're talking about, take a site. We look at the same site and you say, do you see that these mountains around us are present? Do you see them? Yes. Now, would you be able to see them? As in, would they be able to be present for you if there's nothing there to be present? If there is no eye to see, if there are no forms to be seen, if the eye doesn't operate well, if the eye organ is impaired, if something happens to the forms, if any of those things that are utterly out of your control, if they were not there, would you be still able to say, this is present? Would you be able to think about it as present? You wouldn't. It's all rooted in that completely sort of thing that's beneath you, underneath you. You can't even conceive it. Well, you can misconceive it, or not misconceive it, in which case you get it rightly. That's the Mullabaraya Sutta point, towards the attitude towards the form and so on, towards the matter and rupa. So if there were no necessary condition of thing to be present, how could you even call about the arisen experience of a sight? Basically, that's what the Buddha is asking them. But he's asking in the most condensed, direct manner. Or that's the manner it was recorded. Either way, the context is, do you see this is present? As in, without anything to be present, can you talk about presence? Without making that presence into a this that is present. So they say, of course not. There needs to be a necessary condition for it, a nutriment.
Yeah, he says, do you see with the cessation of that nutriment what has come to be subject to cessation?
Yeah, so while you're looking at these mountains, imagine suddenly, whatever, your optical cord gets severed, I don't know, snaps inside for whatever, some bacteria ate it, and you just go blind. Would you be still able to have the experience of that sight? You wouldn't. Yet, would you be able to stop that nutriment from disappearing? No. That's the definition of nutriment, by the way. That's why there are those contemplations about nutriment. They're not in your control. They're independent of you. Yeah, nutriment is something you would eat or take, but you can only do so because it made itself available to be eaten or taken.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's not rooted in you. And it's even more profound than that because, as I said, yeah, you can call it a nutriment, but in this case, even your own eyes are not yours. So they're part of the nutriment, part of the nutriment relationship upon which the presence of sight depends, upon which your whole experience of visual objects and things and desire and lust and repulsion depends.
But my eyes are gone, but then I can still remember.
Yeah, exactly.
What I saw. But
so you're just remembering the absence is present now for you. The absence of things used to be seen, but that is present. Yeah. And if you don't see presence in regard to that arisen phenomena, you're still the victim of the same wrong view. So yeah, what that's saying is that even if you lose your eyes, you can still become an arahant based on your previous experience, if you understand it correctly, right here, right now, in your thoughts.
Mm-hmm. So it says, Bhikkhus, does doubt arise when one is uncertain thus? Has this come to be?
Is this present?
Yeah. Is this present? Does doubt arise?
So if you're not sure about the present experience, is this thing, whatever that is, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, is this thing present? If you start questioning that, you start doubting it. Or if you start questioning, maybe you don't question the obvious presence of your sight, but you start questioning, yeah, but is it then that that form is necessary for the presence of that form to be?
It says, do you doubt the... Because does doubt arise when one is uncertain? Does its presence occur with that as nutriment?
Exactly, yeah. So whichever aspect you're not sure about, that's where doubt arises. And see what the Buddha is pointing out, that's how you go beyond the doubt. Upon the most fundamental principle of Paticca-samuppada. With this is. Or with this present, this is present. But this and this, or with this is present, that is present. But not that in terms of like a second thing after, but more like second thing that's also there. Like presence can be discerned in regard to that which is present simultaneously with that presence. If you start to think about presence separate from the object that is present, you made that presence into an object that is present, which means it's not a presence. You're misconceiving the consciousness. In other way around, if you think you can access the form and matter in the world there without it being present for you beforehand, you assume like a direct relationship with matter and so on, which is like inconceivable. The only way you can know matter is because it's manifested. It's present. That's what we said, the matter finds the footing in your experience through you misconceiving its presence, basically. Finds the footing in consciousness, I think. That's how he put it.
Finds a footing means...
well, you make it to be that which it isn't. You misconceive it. Does it say finds a footing in consciousness or finds a footing in... I can't remember. It's much more. Either way, the four great elements, the four Mahabhutas, are below your feet, so to speak. They're outside of the scope of your experience. You thinking you can relate to them one way or the other, they find a footing in your experience because of that, because of your misconceiving. Hence again, Mula Pariyana Sutta talks about uprooting these misconceivings, and then the four great elements cease. As in, the only way for them to exist were being misconceived. So if a person doubts whether presence is independent of that which is present, or whether it's not independent, or whether it's both, whether it's neither, which one comes first? Well, is this a cause for it? He's not free from doubt. If he clearly sees for himself, and this is nothing, this is as not abstract as it can get. If it's abstract, it's only because people have so much work to do in terms of undoing their wrong views, so that then this starts to make sense. But that's not a reason to not start doing it. So this is the most direct insight, basically, of Paticcasamuppada that defines the Dhamma, that defines freedom from suffering and everything else. With this, this is. With this present, this is. As in the two simultaneous things. Exactly. You can just say, no, it's only things that are present. Or you can say, no, all the things are present in my consciousness, or for my consciousness. Either way, you overshoot the mark. No, there is presence of things. As in, there is the consciousness and I and form on the other side. There is consciousness and ear and sounds on the other side. And all the senses and all the thoughts and mind. So in other words, presence is not the same as things that are present, but presence without things that are present is utterly inconceivable. Even if you're thinking it in your thoughts carelessly, you are misconceiving it by doing so. So it doesn't mean, I must stop doing it. You can't stop doing it. But what you can stop doing is misconceiving while you're doing it. In other words, when you think about presence, you stop carrying that gratuitous assumption that it stands for that pure consciousness that is underneath, which is just a hollow, gratuitous, harmful view.
So it continues, Bhikkhus, is doubt abandoned in one who sees as it actually is with proper wisdom, thus this has come to be? I say yes. Bhikkhus, is doubt abandoned in one who sees as it actually is with proper wisdom, its presence occurs with that as nutriment? Yes. Is doubt abandoned in one who sees as it actually is with proper wisdom, thus with the cessation of that nutriment, what has come to be is subject to cessation?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's basically fully clearing any notion of yourself being involved there, being required there. You see there is an experience of sight. Then you see the necessary basis for that experience to arise, to manifest. Then you see that that basis is utterly out of your control. Like inconceivable. It's inconceivable that you could stop your eye from deteriorating, or your heart from having a heart attack, or your brain from ceasing to work, or your lungs from stopping to breathe. It's inconceivable that you have a say over the form that's out there like can only be misconceived basically, because there's no way of accessing it. So you fully understand that, you stop basically even the most gratuitous, the subtlest of assumptions you might have had about the conceit, vanity, sense of control, self-centeredness, self-view, all of that will cease, because it just utterly becomes then inconceivable. All of your conceivings of self-view, I am, this is mine, this is for me, all of those conceivings are based on you misconceiving that relationship of that independence. You stop misconceiving that relationship, everything else that you've been conceiving on top of it becomes inconceivable. That's why the Buddha could categorically say, for somebody with a right view, it is inconceivable to take any determination as permanent, any determination as suffering, anything as self. For somebody with right view, it's inconceivable to do this, to do this, to do this. For somebody who is beyond sensuality, it's inconceivable to do this. They are things that become utterly inconceivable, right here and right now.
Slightly different, same topic.
Oh yeah, go on. I obviously wandered off.
No, it was keeping the same thing here, but he's saying, do you see this? So you could also, do you see the foreground?
Sure.
And do you understand that without the background, the foreground is impossible?
Would you understand you wouldn't be able to designate the foreground without unless there is a peripheral awareness of it? That's not part of that designation.
So I'm not. So if I'm contemplating,
that's exactly with this. This is.
Yeah.
Without this cannot be. It's a definition, but it's not part.
The foreground, background is.
Sure. With foreground, background can be correctly discerned.
So I'm not exactly thinking about consciousness. I'm not thinking about perception.
That's why the Buddha wouldn't even say their consciousness. He asked them this.
Do you see this?
Do you see a phenomenon of any kind?
And nutriment.
Do you see the phenomenon arising with a nutriment, as in inseparable from its basis, inconceivable without it being present as well? Yes, we see that. For the one who sees like that, is he free from doubt about that? Of course he is free from doubt. For the one who sees that, would he be able to think, oh, but if the nutriment of this phenomenon disappears, phenomenon will still remain? No, that becomes inconceivable as well.
But for most people, they don't see the domain of nutriment.
No, it's completely invisible.
The
no, because most people would see things. Well, again, it comes from that original Sati view of kind of assuming a certain external world to yourself, from which you observe things happening in the world to yourself. It doesn't matter. There's this whole observation, meditation techniques, following your sensations and whatnot. It's all about witnessing and looking at things, as if that's how you learn their nature. It's all about foreground and collecting data about the foreground. There's no discernment of the peripheral where the nature is, without making the peripheral another foreground.
But just look
anything,
at
any
the foreground.
That's why you stop looking, oh, my elbows, my knees, my breath, my tip of my nose. No, body is there already. Sight is there, sound is there, smell, taste, touches are there, thoughts are there. Pick any, and you can start discerning the principle rightly. But in order to pick any, you have to undo all these views that are kind of pulling you into that foreground even more, whereby it's about observation and witnessing and catching the moments of impermanence and whatnot.
So when I look at this foreground, okay, I know I have the information about the background, so
sure.
But this comes about through so many things which is not this. Food, that's not here.
Yeah. And all of those things can be the right nutriment. They will enable you to sort of stop conceiving yourself as the owner, if they're seen within the arisen thing, not before or after it, not as a linear process, as one leads to two, leads to three, but one within one. So that's exactly the point. Take this, just say, my experience as a whole, me sitting in this room on a chair, holding a sutta, that's it, just my birth. Take anything and just have it present as a phenomenon that you just designated in your foreground as enduring there. And then through that endurance of that phenomenon, allow your mind to then think about necessity of food, necessity of a beating heart, necessity of a certain degree of health, necessity of freedom from accidents, necessity of freedom from too sudden, too large change of an elements. And then you realize, oh, that's why I'm alive. Not because I am, not because I'm in control, but because the life still hasn't met, basically.
Those nutrients.
Those nutrients are still there. They're present. That's the whole point. Even if you're not necessarily eating all the time, the fact that food that you ate, that you will be eating and so on, it's there, fueling this body, because of which all of this is present. Your nutriment is present. Through that. Your birth is present through that. Not in the past, right there in the present. The fact that this body is here. And I don't mean that momentarily, like you're born every second. No. Your birth was manifested, and we call the manifestation of birth, we call it life.
Yes, life. Yeah. Yes.
So your life is what your birth is.
Yeah. And what about, so I can discern life, the general life. This is.
Yes. I am alive.
And
you can say that.
The background to that is the not death.
In a way, yeah, that would be like a very, very subtle,
not
present phenomenon.
Not life.
Absence of death.
Absolutely.
That's where you are alive.
Yeah. And
but if you want, in order to arrive at it correctly, not that you are not arriving correctly, but I'm saying for somebody who wants to try that, it might be more prudent to start with simpler, as in it's still the same principle. It's not like, oh, you start around and go about. No, it's the same principle. So I am alive, right here, right now. Whether you think about it or not, whether you pay attention to it or not, your life endures. Because in any second, if I ask you, yes, of course I'm alive. Your life is still there, enduring, as the utmost general thing. It's even more general than your particular feelings or moods. They might arise and last for days and so on. Yeah. So, I'm alive. While you are mindful of that, and by mindful I mean like think I'm alive, and then allow it to go into that background, as in stop trying to actively repeat to yourself, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive. Let it drift away, so to speak, without completely forgetting about it. I'm alive. Because I'm alive, I can talk here. Because I'm alive, I'm sitting here, I will go hungry later, I will do this later. Because I'm alive, I can read the suttas. Because I'm alive, I can practice Dhamma. That's one direction. Now you can take that further or the opposite way and say, I am alive because there is the beating heart in me. I am alive because my mother raised me. My mother fed me where I could when I couldn't. I am alive because there is still food edible present for me as an option. I am alive because the 5 aggregates are still not destroyed. That's it. But you need to, like, anybody can see that and anybody can say that. But it's very hard to do it properly. And by properly, I mean see this paticca-samuppada. That's why when Ananda said to the Buddha, oh, this paticca-samuppada, it's so obvious, of course, you see it in everything. Because it's the principle of simultaneous presence. Of this because of this. But the Buddha said, no, don't say that. It's actually a very, very subtle thing to see. Now, of course, you've been looking at it for 20 years, so that's all you see. But most people, because they don't see that obvious thing in a way, they don't see it correctly, they remain bound to samsara. And correctly means seeing that relationship of dependence, not just manufacturing it based on your idea of paticca-samuppada. So while, say to yourself, I am alive, right here, right now, I am still alive, and still it's enduring, my life is enduring. I don't have to make any effort, like directly to keep my life, I'm alive. No, you're alive. Now, why am I alive while I'm alive? So why am I alive while I am alive? Which means you're still mindful that you're alive, but you start looking for why within that mindfulness. So why? Because there is this heart still beating in me. If that thing stops, I cannot conceive life anymore, no matter how much I might resist it. If my pathways, airways get sort of obstructed, my lungs collapse, I'm done. And that is inconceivable to prevent if it were to happen. Yet, I'm alive, right here, right now, is fully dependent upon it, fully determined by it. That is its core nutrient. Presence of operating organs. Organs that are on the level of chair, table, everything else. But if you just see them as a chair, table and everything else, you're not seeing that nutriment relationship. That's why the Buddha never said, oh yeah, look, this stone is free from self and it's impermanent and you are... No, because you're indifferent towards the stone. Find things you're not indifferent about, and within them discern their dependence on a certain nutriment, such as present body, living body, freedom from accident, all of these things. That's what the Buddha asked the monks in that sutta in the forest. He said, monks, would you be upset if like people come in this woodland where we are sitting now and start collecting all these twigs and branches and breaking them and burning them? They said, no, of course we wouldn't be upset. Why? Because like those branches are not ours, we don't care about them. And he said, so you should develop the same attitude towards your own body, towards your own senses. As in, you need to see that it can't be yours even if you want it to be yours. And you see that it can't be yours when recognizing the relationship of nutriment, the definition of Paticcasamuppada. With this is. If there is no operating organs, or like heart, whichever we want to single out, all or one, doesn't matter. If there is no body being alive there for which you have no say, you couldn't be present right here, right now, experiencing these things. But that recognition must not be seen as before or after, or one moment before, the next moment, no. Must be seen within the enduring peripheral awareness of the fact that you are alive while you're thinking that. Hence, Yoniso Manasikara we spoke about before. And again, in a way, it's like all people would have to do in order to see it is stop trying to catch it, stop trying to assume it momentarily. That's when in Thero we often talk about the time, as in people assume it linearly, and that's how you exclude yourself out. All you need to do is just allow things to be. Stop trying to do it.
And see the principle.
But not like, oh, just be. No, you need to discern something within that just be. Because mindfulness in itself, well, it's not mindfulness. Only mindfulness that's understood based on the principle of mindfulness can be called the right mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I mean when we spoke about before about the moods or different things. Allow it to endure. So yeah, as the Buddha said, monks, do you see this is? That this that the Buddha refers to can be pretty much any general thing you want to attend to. So just say to yourself, I am alive. And don't try to force it, don't try to keep it. You are still alive. Even if you start doubting it. Yeah, but did I what I just say? All of that is because you're already alive. And that's already can be discerned in the peripheral of whatever you're attending. So once that comes down, then within that peripheral of I am alive, because there is a beating heart, within this I am alive. I am alive because the senses are still operating within this. I am alive because the nutriment is still available of food. I am alive because that random consciousness hasn't turned away from an object, as the Buddha would say, from Namarupa.
So going back again, what I'm saying, can I say I'm alive because I'm not dead?
Yeah, you can say that as well. I'm alive because death hasn't affected me yet. But see, the fact that death can affect that because of which you are alive means you have no say in neither life nor death. Whatever you do is secondary to it. Secondary as in not after, in a sense of time, but secondary it's sort of after within it. As in it's not as fundamental. So yes, the only reason you're alive is because you're not dead. And that's why Marananusati is like the quickest and the sharpest way to free yourself from any dispassion and lust and become an arahant.
The presence of the absence of death.
Sure.
Is the nutriment for.
Well, it's the condition for your life. It determines your life. Because if the absence of death if the absence of death ceases to be absent, your life's gone.
Your life is.
And see, you can discern that as on that level of possibility, as in you can discern it peripherally as a possibility, but you cannot possibly uproot it or do anything about it, which means it's certainty. Possibilities are certain. They're possible in their content, but certain in their nature. And that's usually the problem, because people would dismiss possibilities as if not applicable to me, usually because of the relative content. It could be this or it can be that. The fact is, it will be one way or the other. And that's where that other cryptic passage, it will not be and it will not be for me, means you stop being concerned with the content of what it will be, but you discern that whatever it will be, it won't be for me. As in, I'm redundant. Either way, even in the utmost remote uncertainty of the content of the utmost remote possibilities, you are redundant, and that's what you discern. And that's no amount of content can affect you or reinduce the sense of self in conceiving and appropriation.
So I'm trying to get to this point of Nibbana. I'm trying to... Where does Nibbana fit here? And now that you brought that up, because that's one of the practices of discerning Nibbana. So, because I know we spoke about it before and we got to discerning Nibbana.
Well, you would discern Nibbana
as
if the presence of the absence of your death is made present. Because actually it is. Death isn't absent. Death is absent in its particular manifestation, but it's very present in its nature. That's why the Buddha said, if you practice mindfulness of death correctly, it's like while you're breathing in, you're thinking, I might not live long to breathe out. Because that's how present death is.
And I will not.
Yeah, sure. If it happens, you will not. But usually people, I will die in 20, 30 years. Then there were monks who would bring it closer. Well, I might not finish by the next morning. I might not wake up. Then there are the ones, I might die before I finish this meal. Then there is one, I might die before I take the next breath. And then the one said, I might die when I inhale before I exhale. And the Buddha said, you are the only one practicing it correctly. Because that's how present that possibility of death is. But because people don't see it, they only look at the particular aspect of that possibility. And by particular aspect, I mean the possible particular manifestation of it. Failing to see that it doesn't matter the manifestation, the possibility is certain. The nature of it is certain. So death is certain. And if you understand that, that's what Nibbana is. Because that is the complete dispassion. That's why Ajahn Chah meant die before you die. Fully understand, develop your mind in regard to death before it actually comes in a particular manner and swipes away your body. That's what Nibbana is. That's what Puthujjanas would be terrified of Nibbana whenever they heard the Buddha describe it. Oh, that will kill me. Because they would still be coming from the sense of self. An assumed external point of view that it's in charge of everything, master of everything, controller of everything, owner of everything, yet this comes right from your very center of your being, from your heart. So it's very frightening.
Because death, I mean, not dying, not death as in end. This is because the end is not.
Say it again?
This is because the end is absent.
Right, the particular manifestation of that death.
Yeah, but the end, the complete cessation.
Ah, I see what you mean. Right. Yeah, that's what death not. That's what death isn't for a Puthujjana. In other words, if Puthujjana dies, it's not a complete cessation.
Yeah.
Death is another experience.
But complete
cessation would be Arahant and Parinibbana.
And that can't be present.
No.
You see?
No, it's present for an Arahant. For an Arahant, Parinibbana is present. That's why he has no problem enduring difficulty and discomfort. Sorry? Parinibbana. By developing Nibbana, Parinibbana is present.
Oh, yeah, okay.
When the residue of the body breaks up.
Yeah, complete cessation.
That is the complete cessation, yeah. And even trying to conceive what's after is inconceivable. But yeah, people think, again, with the assumption of the external view, how we started this whole thing with that sutta, people assume the contents of your life eventually lead to death and then the new contents start. If you believe in rebirth, if not, doesn't matter. You still assume that linear progression. But death is an experience in itself that has arisen. And you have no idea how long it lasts because you never experienced it. So the assumption that death just is about ending of these particular things, it's completely gratuitous as well. But an assumption that death is the new beginning, it's equally gratuitous. You have no idea what death is. But thinking that it lasts momentarily, it's rather foolish. Because the Buddha himself said, pains of death or those of dying, whenever he wants to illustrate the great pains. And you know when they say, oh, the Sotapanna can become an Arahant at the moment of the death. There's no moment of the death. There's the experience of death. And that experience can last for a long time. So yeah, somebody with the right view will have plenty of time to become an Arahant there and then, because there is nothing coming through his senses distracting him anymore. That's what there's that sutta where it says, Sotapanna, if he doesn't become an Arahant in this life, he becomes an Arahant upon dying. Or if he doesn't become an Arahant in this life, or when he dies, he becomes an Arahant where he's like in limbo, basically, in between.
During the dying.
During the dying, whatever. Or if he doesn't become an Arahant, then he becomes an Arahant upon landing. That is as close as you can have that translation. Or if not upon landing, then upon the next life, and so on. In other words, people need to stop thinking these momentary successions of experiences is what my experience is, because that's a completely gratuitous external point of view in regard to yourself. You yourself cannot see yourself like that. You can only assume and then act out of that assumption, which actually contradicts your very experience. Hence, it's a wrong, harmful view.
External assumption. So, I'll continue because it's almost finished this question.
Go on, yeah.
Questionings. So Buddha continues. He says, Bhikkhus, are you thus free from doubt here? This has come to be. Yes, Venerable Sir.
This has risen.
Bhikkhus, are you thus free from doubt here? Its origination occurs with that as nutriment. Yes, Venerable Sir.
Its presence is because its nutriment is present.
And Bhikkhus, are you thus free from doubt here? With the cessation of that nutriment, what has come to be is subject.
If the absence of nutriment goes, if the nutriment is absent, can the thing that's present because of that nutriment stay present? Absolutely not, even for a second longer.
So beyond doubt.
With this is. Without this isn't. That's it. Paticcasamuppada.
And then Bhikkhus, has it been seen well by you as it actually is with proper wisdom thus? This has come to be. And I will say, yes, Venerable Sir. Has it been seen well by you as it actually is with proper wisdom? Its origination occurs with that as nutriment. Yes, Venerable Sir. And he goes on, the Bhikkhus, purified and bright as this view is, if you adhere to it, cherish it, treasure it, and treat it as a possession, would you then understand that the Dhamma has been taught as similar to a raft, being for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of grasping? So no, Venerable Sir. Bhikkhus, purified and bright as this view is, if you do not adhere to it, treasure it, cherish it, and treat it as a possession, would you then understand that the Dhamma has been taught as similar to a raft, being for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of grasping? Yes, Venerable Sir. So, if you don't cherish the right view.
Yeah, it means they were all at least Sotapannas, or even more. It doesn't necessarily specify, because those specifications came later. It's about seeing the Dhamma or not seeing the Dhamma. There's no in between.
Mm-hmm.
So they all see the Dhamma, they all have the clear view, but some of them might not be exposing their view, as in might not be dwelling on it, might not be drilling it, because it's such an amazing view, it's such an insight that they might already be happy with it. But the Buddha said, and then you kind of protect it in a way, automatically, simply by not trying to dismantle everything that needs to be dismantled on account of it. That's why he would urge people who've seen the Dhamma, who've seen the nature of Nibbana, to make the effort further in that sense. No, just what you got, don't just cherish it and put it on a shelf. Use it. Use it and use it and use it. Because it will only get stronger and then you'll go beyond it. Don't be lazy, don't be distracted.
And the rest of the sutta continues a little bit about nutriment and then goes into Paticcasamuppada on more particular explanation or descriptions.
Yeah, of course, because it's all about Paticcasamuppada.
And so there, with birth as condition.
Whichever phenomenon you take generally, you can discern its nutriment within it, and that's exactly why Paticcasamuppada starts in such a broad manner. Not always, or ends, in a broad manner, but not always. sometimes the Buddha would define it differently, with not 12 factors but 16 or 8 factors and whatnot.
Says Bhikkhus, remember this discourse of mind briefly as the deliverance in the destruction of craving. But remember the Bhikkhu Sati, son of a fisherman, as caught up in a vast net of craving, in a trammel of craving. I don't know why they mean travel.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to the sutta.